It's recording. All right, I'll share. There we go. Okay. Let's get started then. This is the Rook committee meeting for October 8th, 2024. We'll start off with our usual milestone checkup and release status. First, for the 1.14 releases, the project board, I was just looking at it, it looks empty, so no urgent issues in the 1.14 branch that are currently raised. So we don't have any releases currently planned for 1.14. It's no urgent issues there. It's still certainly possible that something will come up, but until something specific comes up, we don't have that release planned. Yeah, any questions about 1.14? No, we'll move on to 1.15. Okay, so the project board for 1.15 still has some items in it since this is our more active development milestone for bug fixes and small features. Maybe the one thing to update on, so this issue with ARM64 OSDs crashing on the latest Reef 18.2.4. I have a note for this later in the agenda, but basically we're just waiting for the next Ceph release. The fix is available there in the Reef branch, as I understand. And the Squid release that just came out did not have this issue, so it seems to have been resolved just fine. But we are just waiting for the next release. But I'm not clear how soon that will be, since the final Quincy release is about to come out, and then after that Quincy release is out, then they'll do the next Reef release. But maybe at least another month, or even two, based on historical release timelines recently. But until then, the workaround is to use 18.2.2 of Reef, or move to Squid. Other issues, I think these other things are pretty much just all things either potentially in progress or that we can work on. What's in the to-do column is just considered optional generally, if we can get to it. Oh, Blaine, I know you said you're going to work on removing holder pods. Oh, well, that doesn't belong on the 115 board. I guess we can move that to the 116 board.
Right, yeah.
But otherwise, I'm not sure there's anything we need to, any specific issues in that list at least to talk about. The next 1.15 release would be next week to have our biweekly cadence, tentatively for the 17th. Any questions on 1.15? Okay, then the kubectl plugin. We haven't really had any active or new features added there recently, so we'll just hold off on the next release there until we have more features there. So if no questions on the release timelines, then we'll move on to the other topics. Just looking at the calendars, the next community meeting is during KubeCon week. Actually, I was realizing that I think I'll be traveling in the evening of the day we would have this, so we could still host it. I think I'll just plan on still hosting it. I don't think Jared, well, I'm not sure if he's going actually, but we'll still. I was thinking we'll still try and host it for whoever's available, because I'll still be online at least. Anybody else know if they'll be online? Blaine, did you say you're traveling that evening, that on the 12th as well?
Yeah,
So
I think
maybe
my
you'll be
travel
here.
schedule is similar to yours.
Right. Okay. So we'll just add a note. Oh, you're already typing. Thanks, Blaine. All right. And otherwise for KubeCon, is Josh here yet? Yeah, Josh is here. So we have made several attempts to get Josh added as a speaker, and Jared said Jared wasn't able to make it to this meeting, but he was letting me know this morning that he is trying. He tried again this morning uh, via a new channel to see if he can get a response from CNCF on getting you added, Josh. So fingers crossed still. I know we're down to the last few weeks though before the conference, so our our hope is running short, I guess. So
If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's okay.
yeah. But honestly, I'm feeling like KubeCon is less and less exciting, maybe because I've been too many of them. Uh, that's probably it. It's always exciting, right? But we'll get you on a future conference. It's just always so nice to have more end users who can talk about how they're using it in their clusters instead of just poor maintainers talking about how we're writing code. That's not as interesting. So okay, so we'll stay tuned on that one again. And we need to get started on the content for that as well. So we'll take that offline. Any other comments on KubeCon? Preparing for it. Yeah, we haven't really planned for any special events at KubeCon. Just there's the booth at KubeCon, and then the maintainers talk, which we got the very last slot of the conference on Friday, so it will probably be a little sparse. But I'm disappointed with the time slot, but that just happens sometimes. Okay, so I guess I already mentioned on the Ceph releases that Quincy's in progress. Reef will be next, hopefully before long, but it may take a month or two. And Squid was released a couple weeks ago. Just a note on that, there was an NFS issue that our Rook CI hit as soon as it. Actually, we hit it a day or two before the release, but they still released. Didn't realize it was a blocking issue, but they were able to re-release the image with the fixed NFS packages, and it didn't even require a 19.2.1. So it's all good now. Within 24 hours, I think they fixed it.
They're very consistent with the .0 releases.
Mhm. About having issues come up.
Yes, I'm paranoid about them now.
Yeah, so I was surprising that they were able to at least use the same image or just release the image again and didn't need a .1. But yeah, in certain emergencies, they do get the releases out, but it still is kind of a sore spot that it takes so long to get normal releases. I think we all miss Sage. That's what that means. Okay, that's so then if no questions there, in the design questions, so Josh had added a note here for your issue that you opened for discussion. I know you and Blaine have commented on that issue. I haven't caught up on it, so I'm behind on it, but happy to open that up for discussion. Josh, do you want to
Sure.
take it away?
Yeah, so I opened an issue yesterday that sort of outlined my thinking on this. It's pretty long and rambly. I tried to keep it short, but to kind of just summarize, as an operator, when I provision buckets, I'm often doing it for a specific application, and it may not even be hosted on Kubernetes or it's not in the same cluster as Kubernetes for various reasons. But I have a lot of bare metal stuff that I worry about. And as part of that, I need to apply an S3 policy to it and say, like, this user can access this bucket and that bucket and whatnot. It can write under these prefixes, etc. And I need to set lifecycle rules. One of the real issues as an operator that you run into is that people can do S3 multi-part uploads and then they just leak forever and consume space. And unless you either manually write something to go and sweep and delete them or set lifecycle rules, they just accumulate and eat up space for forever. Um, and so what I'm proposing is that we either resurrect the object bucket claim and put some work into it, fix the issues with that, and add the ability to manage lifecycle, or perhaps add a new CRD, a new kind that is specific to just managing Ceph buckets. Um, I think that's a good summary. Is Blaine on?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So Blaine and I have been talking about this, and obviously I'm aware of Kazi, and it just doesn't feel like Kazi has the intent to cover this thing. It's maybe too Ceph specific or too S3 specific. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Um, y- yeah, I mean, for things that are extremely specific to Ceph, like Cozy isn't uh, potentially the best vehicle. Um, however, right, like as a maintainer, I also want to make sure that my efforts are directed to like maximum benefit, which a lot of times means filling in gaps, right? So anything Cozy can do, I want Cozy to do because Cozy is the focus. Like OBCs are not going to be resurrected. Like Cozy was started by the people who wrote the OBC API. OBCs are an alpha API, and there won't ever be like another OBC API. Cozy is like the next OBC API, and work there is going slowly because I, I'm one of like two people driving the project, and have so many things that vie for my time. Uh, but yeah, there definitely are like even outside of Cozy, like I can definitely understand there are gaps to fill in. I would prefer not to create a like Ceph bucket API in Rook because that is going to be like duplicating a lot of what Cozy does. I'm not opposed to that being present, but I don't like I don't think I can sign on to do that work and like have another like time focus.
Yeah, so
I
I, I think that there's like three things that I outlined there that are missing. One was the life cycle rules, one was policy, and the third was quota. So quotas are the thing that's Ceph specific. The other two are using standard S3 API, have been there for a decade plus. Um, I, I've been using them for at least that long, I think, looking back at my Terraform repos. So
Mhm. So if they are S3 generic or S3 standard, then is there do they fit, would they fit into Cozy? Cozy is more about bucket provisioning though, but I mean we need bucket configuration of
right.
those things, all those things, right? Lifecycle
Yeah, those are things that
policies
are
and things.
attached to a bucket in S3.
Right.
I mean, we need a way to prove them. It doesn't like Kazi or not Kazi. I think that the thing that I would like to achieve today is just agreement that we need to support these use cases, right? Like setting bucket policy, setting lifecycle rules. Those are important things that an operator needs to be able to do. Um, and exactly what the vehicle is for doing that, is I don't really have that strong feelings about it. I mean, I'm certainly willing to work on, adding a new kind to deal with that if that's the path forward. Um, but just an agreement that these are things that are valuable to operators, and that is something that should be addressed either through a Causey driver or native type or whatever. Um, I mean, there are other people that are clearly trying to get this going on Kubernetes. There is Linode has started a um, uh, uh, sorry, the name is escaping me for a second. Control plane, crossplane, a crossplane provider that is Ceph specific, and it knows how to do all of those things. So there's clearly people who are interested in this.
Yeah. Josh, even I think like I am working with people who we are like also working on quota management, but it's through API. like RGW API and some abstraction to it. But yeah, I think the use case exists. Yeah, I can like maybe discuss more later talk. But yeah, I'll need to gather some insights on it. Yeah, maybe not for like cozy we are doing, but just for general RGW as a enhancement using API. Yeah, yeah, but it would be good to have even in RGW or like in Rook.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is kind of one of those things where the I think what RGW does has been sort of fenced in by staying compatible with what S3 does. S3 being, I mean, actual AWS S3, they don't care about you leaking multi-part uploads. Like, it's great. They get a billion for that. You have to take action yourself to manually set a lifecycle policy. There's no way for you, like administratively at the AWS account level to say, I want to delete these things after one day. Of course, there is a field that just says, like, set a lifecycle rule for multi-part uploads, expire them after one day. Like they literally give you the tools to do it yourself, but you have to set it on a per bucket basis.
Mm,
And of course, there can only be one lifecycle policy period. So let's say you want to also delete objects that are more than 30 days old, which is something that I actually want to do. Also, I can't have two separate policies. It has to be a single policy document, one piece of JSON that's uploaded to set the lifecycle. Um, so it's a little unfortunate as to the way S3 did things that didn't even allow multiple lifecycle policies.
mhm.
Mhm. Well, in object stores in RGW, it is a big area. I mean, and so I think what Blaine is also saying, core maintainers were a little short on time. I know Santosh is starting to work more on RGW, but keeps getting pulled into other things. So it's something maybe we can agree that yes, it makes sense. How we do it or who's going to work on it, it may take time to
I
figure
think
that out.
yeah, Travis, I can check like we are doing that work, but it's not yet open source. So I can check like uh, it, if we can directly work upstream or at open source the thing, or at least like
Mhm.
invite the contributor here for discussions. So yeah, find someone.
That'd be
Yeah,
great,
maybe
especially
we
to
could check.
to comment on the issue that Josh just opened. It's linked in there,
Ah, yeah.
14815. That'd be great to
Ah, yeah.
even discuss potential
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yep.
thoughts
Yeah,
there.
yeah, I'll take a look. Thanks. Thanks,
Great.
Josh, for opening the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of one of those things where I'm sure that lots of people have this need. Like this is not an unusual thing. I've been doing this with actual AWS for a very long time. So it's people have to be solving this need. It's just a question of what they've done to do it, right? So there's like you can get the standard Terraform provider for AWS to work. There are a couple of, looks like now dead providers that support the RGW administrative API, so you can set a quota. I found yesterday this. So yesterday I said, well, people have got to be solving this. I know that there's a Terraform provider for Crossplane. I wonder if somebody's done something. So I started googling for that, and I ran into this Linode provider, which doesn't use Terraform. It just directly uses the S3 and RGW admin APIs. So people are trying to solve this in a Kubernetes native way.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the right way. Let's see.
Yeah. Okay. Blaine, any other comments on that, or we can take it offline?
Yeah, I mean, I think uh, this will require ongoing and detailed discussion for quite some time.
I think the actual what needs to be done is relatively simple. Um, I mean, quotas were working in the past with OBC, so it's just something has gone faulty with that logic. Setting lifecycle, since it's a single document, is relatively easy to reconcile. Like the document is in sync, it needs to be replaced or not. Um, policy is probably a little bit more ranging, but there's already, I think, already some logic in there, or maybe it's just ACLs that are being set in the RGF wheel controller.
Yeah, definitely. There have been like some ideas around like parts of I mean I kind of want to break this into parts of being like policy is like one part, life cycle rules is another part. Like it, doing like Ceph specific bucket management outside of Cozy or OBC like it would be like a separate part. Like this is like I'm viewing this issue as like here's like a holistic kind of breakdown of like the issues, like, and then
Yeah,
from here we want to like break them into like individual parts.
yeah,
And definitely like life
that's fair.
cycles aren't right, like those don't have like a CR type policy doesn't either, I don't think. And then buckets are like, currently OBC based largely, unless you're going to Cozy. And like for anything bucket related, I really want to fit that into the Cozy API because I don't want to have like, two different systems if we don't have to. Uh, Especially when, you're talking about like, oh, I want these access control lists or whatever on this bucket when it, or this user when it's sort of like inverting the way of like thinking about using Cozy's resources, I think still meets a lot of those needs, but like also like Cozy kind of takes the assumption that your applications run in Kubernetes, which I'm hearing that's not your use case.
Well, it is one of my
Um,
use cases. As I laid out the three different scenarios last night in a follow-up post. So I have things that are deployed on Kubernetes on the same cluster as RookSF. I have things that are deployed on Kubernetes on a different cluster from RookSF. And I have things that are not deployed on Kubernetes and never will be deployed on Kubernetes that are talking to RookSF. So I have all three of those scenarios. Of those, the last one is actually the most mission critical for me because I have data acquisition that runs on like bare metal stuff that's feeding data in. And so that's like if people are not aware, I work for a telescope construction project. So it's an astronomical observatory. And so collecting the data is like the most important piece. And that it doesn't run on Kubernetes. Um, but it does need to go into S3. Like we're trying to push everything into S3. That's the direction that we're going. So that's really important. But I think there are a fair number of applications out there that do expect to be able to read from multiple buckets for various different reasons. And right now with Causey, I don't think you can support that because, well, it probably actually works because the way the ACLs are set up. But ideally, you'd be able to push an IAM policy onto it to say, this user is allowed to read from this bucket, et cetera.
er- right, yeah. So you're right. The current Cozy V1 Alpha 1 does not support that. Cozy V1 Alpha 2, which is uh, in progress, has multi-bucket support for users as a like stated goal.
Yeah, so
And
maybe
like how the back end implements that is up to the back end. Like saying it's an IAM policy, that's sort of kind of like thinking AWS S3 specific, but and that's probably how, or that is I think exactly how the like OBC controller handles it and how Cozy would handle it. But like that one to many relationship is an intent for the Cozy API, which is still an alpha.
well, I mean, the S3 IAM stuff is used by everything as far as I know. I mean, at least it's true for RGW and Minio. I assume it's like standard in everything.
Yeah, I can't speak to what Azure or GCP are doing or like any proprietary like object storage thing out there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually use Google Cloud Storage, um, but very simplistically for some stuff. I don't know what it does for policy. All right, so maybe the place to start then is on setting bucket quotas, since that is a RGW specific thing. It's not part of the S3 API at all. Um,
And that's something, so we think that was working with OBCs and and there's a bug around that, or that's a different thing.
well, it's in the examples. So
Right.
I
Oh,
have never I do not personally know that it was working. I assumed that it was working at some point and then it stopped.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that I don't know if we test this in our downstream CI or not, but I know it is tested that uh, for OBCs, quotas that are set on the storage class are supported.
Interesting.
I don't, I, right, and that is the model that Cozy will take, and like there have been days long discussions in the Cozy working group about exposing uh, the like map string like opaque parameters to users, and that has been rejected like pretty handily. And I don't like I would just consider it a documentation bug that it suggests that the user facing OBC can like control an opaque map string. Like that's ridiculous. That would give users basically admin permissions to just say, oh, give me these, things. Like I just want to do this. And that's like like I think Josh, when I've talked to you, you have like a high level of trust for your like consumers and applications, but that's not true in all environments. And
Well, I mean, the thing is if they can create a Ceph object store user now, then they can just create themselves, any capabilities they want and go wild, right? So
yeah, totally.
in that scenario, unless you've done something else, the cows are already out of the barn. Um,
But, but yeah, we do expect that the quotas are working and they don't seem to be. I think I saw a PR open today, but I haven't caught up on things yet today. So
I
hopefully we
filed
can
a
get that working soon.
Yeah, I filed the bug a couple of weeks ago, and if I recall, I couldn't set anything. So I tried to change owner. I tried to do a few other things, and none of it worked. I don't know
W-
what of that was working in the past, but there was examples for it.
We did have a bug reported, I think today or like this weekend, where someone was saying if they create an OBC, so the way that OBCs work is that I gather this is historical, that there used to not be bucket quotas in RGW, only user quotas.
Mhm. That's
So
true.
Rook still uses those user quotas for OBCs. But if you create an OBC in the uh, what is it? The like main like primary zone, quotas work fine. But if you create an OBC in a non-primary zone, uh, the like Rados Gateway admin API commands to register the quotas don't take.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that could be a factor in your environment, but that
Uh,
is something that
i-
I was looking at earlier this morning.
In the test scenario, there was only one zone,
Okay.
and setting quotas by hand does work on the bucket. I can give you an example of that. If you give me a second.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
mean I am quite sure that quotas do work when they're specified on the storage class. And I, yeah, like I said, I would be more inclined to mark it as a documentation bug to suggest that an OBC end user can specify their own quota
Okay, but
when creating an OBC.
Okay, but then the question is how do we administratively do that? Because for me, Rook is the thing that administers Ceph. It is my configuration management tool. It's how I set my administrative policy. If I have to, go into the toolbox and run a command by hand, then I don't have any sort of configuration management. My policy isn't sitting
Right,
in a Git
you
repo that I
don't.
just push.
You specify the opaque parameters on the storage class that's used by the OBC, and that's
Okay.
how it's handled administratively.
Okay. Well, that's the thing that I couldn't get to work. Um,
Okay, so you've tried setting it on the storage class?
yeah.
Okay.
I think I posted the complete example. Uh, the example I did not. Okay, so let me. I may eat crow here. Let me retry this with setting on the storage class and see if it works or not.
Yeah. I mean, it is also possible that there's a bug somewhere. Like we've had this reported for non-primary zones. It's possible that it extends to beyond that. Like uh I just want to make sure that we're all like clear on like what is definitely supported and then what is like an open kind of like uh, question.
And then the other issue with using OBC is that it will stomp on the policy for you, and there's a bug for that too.
Yeah, yeah, I think it reapplies the policy every single time.
Yeah. So if you kill off the operator or wait long enough, it'll try to reconcile it and it'll stomp on it.
Yeah, I had a conversation with like Casey Bodley and Matt Benjamin and Frank Phils maybe many months ago about that. And the at the time, the idea that Matt Benjamin and his team had were basically having multiple uh right, the RGW basically requires more nuanced ways of setting policy. There's like default policy, but then there's like admin policy control as well, right? Where you have different layers of administration, basically. So
Uh,
I think
I
there
was not
are
aware it was possible to set a default policies, but maybe just my ignorance.
that, well, it's not, but that's like what we were talking about that may be required for RGW is when we're talking about like more dynamic environments, or just
You,
like more complicated environments. They're the admin, like the most like high tier admin may want to say, I don't ever want to allow this thing to be set, or I always want this field to be this parameter. But, anyone else who's like managing like an application, like it's fine if they want to go and like control these parameters. And that
yeah,
like that
I mean,
kind
there's
of distinction isn't possible and would be required for Rook to accept user policies and also have its own set of policies that it applies when it creates OBCs.
so there's a certain set of limitations that are just inherent in RGW because it doesn't support the equivalent of IAM user policies. So like with S3, AWS S3, you can say this user can create buckets or not. Like that is something that you can put into an IAM policy and attach to the user and give that to them or not. And RGW doesn't have the equivalent of that. You can, at
Oh, I
least as
see.
far as I know, you can attach policy to buckets. You can attach lifecycle to buckets, but just like AWS3, but there is no ability to set that on a user. Like there's capabilities of giving them access to the admin API beyond that and whatnot. And you can set a quota on the user saying this user can create 3 buckets, but no more. Um, but there's none of the IA levels. I'm just going to take away your ability to create buckets. That's not there.
I see. I that may have been something kind of underlying that discussion that I wasn't aware of at the time. I'm
Yeah, so it'd be nice if there was a way to set like a default for buckets that are created, but I think then you're looking at merging, right? So that users can
yeah,
still set their own and then having to merge that JSON document.
right. Yeah, and I mean I think Rook would basically just have to like uh, rely on some existing or write its own JSON merge logic and just trust that you know one, make sure that users don't have their own ability just to control whatever they want, and that administrators just take proper caution when setting uh, setting their own overrides. Uh, doing any sort of like YAML or JSON merging can be pretty
Yeah.
hairy. And yeah, I mean, ideally we would rely on RGW to like do policy merging and stuff. um, which is what the conversation that I had months ago was kind of about, was not having like Rook and Ceph ADM like invent.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great, but that sounds long enough away that for me as an end user, it's not going to happen soon enough to address my need, right? Um, that's we're talking something that's like beyond 19, right? So, um,
Likely, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It is coming in Squid. Uh, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I knew that there was changes to, or there's the addition of user accounts. So in RGW, you now have tenants, users, sub-users, and now user accounts as all different things. Um,
Mm.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Zuhair asked about the user accounts, and I saw that that was like new feature, but I wasn't sure if that would be exposed at all through what Rook has passed through already. I'm guessing not.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm aware of because one of my big complaints about the behavior of RGW is it treats every user as if they are an AWS account. So if I have two separate users that both create a bucket within the same region or RGW ID, um, when you list buckets, the users can't see each other's buckets. Like they don't show up in the global list. You can still access them if you know the name of the bucket, but they don't appear there. That's not a problem for code, but it's an issue for humans that say, hey, this is broken. I can't see this bucket or whatever. It's kind of annoying. And so supposedly at the addition of account users is more like an IAM user underneath an AWS account, where the AWS account analog is the equivalent of a user. At least it's my
Interesting.
understanding without having used it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been a good discussion. Are we at a point now where we could take it offline or?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, I mean, what's the next step forward? I would like to, pick something to move forward on so that I can put some time into it. I can put some time into this, in the next month or so, and then I'm gonna have to move on.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think I would suggest like for the things that are important to you, uh, let's try to identify like two or three of those, and then
It's hands down
figure
bucket
out what
quotas. It's
bucket
hands down
quotas.
bucket
Okay,
quotas. Yeah.
let's
Yes.
dig into that, and then if there's like another like stretch goal, we can look into that too. I think bucket quotas are should be working unless they have broken, right? So there may be another thing we can then approach after that. But
I
that's,
will,
I
as
mean,
soon as we're done here, I will create a new test and I will let you know if I'm just full of it. I'll repeat it and set it on the storage class.
okay. Yeah, that sounds good. That's generally the way that I like to work in a more Kanban approach, where it's just like what's the thing that is most priority to me, and let's see if we can do something about it, or like, it come to an agreement that like it'll be deferred and then go to the next thing. That's
Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, so bucket
makes
quota,
sense
and
to
then
me.
after that would be life cycle, because life cycle
Okay.
is the thing that I really want an active enforcement mechanism to make sure that it's set. If the access policy is missing, then that is a really obvious problem and stuff breaks and it catches on fire. If the lifecycle policy isn't set, you sort of find out because users are complaining that they've used up all of their storage quota and there's no objects in the bucket.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah, let's plan to kind of like tackle those things as next like deeper offline topics.
Okay, it's great.
And it sounds like the issue you opened is kind of a big issue with several things. So it probably makes sense to separate into different issues for each feature we're talking about. If, um, Not that we need to open all of them right now, but as we progress, uh, prioritize probably one separate issues.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the big ones are going to be if the bucket quotas are broken, life cycle, and then the ability to at least be able to use object bucket claim or CAUSE. Like I said, I'm more than happy to move to CAUSE if it can cover this use case. That I can actually set the IAM policy on the bucket without it being overridden by the operator.
Yeah,
Mhm.
IAM policies are going to require some much deeper conversation. I mean, I'm definitely like willing to kind of start those, but uh, yeah, that's going to be a, a
Big topic.
basket of.
I mean, I think that in the short term, if we could just add a Boolean field to object bucket claim and say, don't reconcile it anymore, that would probably cover it.
Okay, that's
At least a
yeah. I mean,
band-aid.
that's definitely something that's uh, doable.
Okay.
Probably some sort of annotation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Then we'll go for that. All right, well, I don't see any other topics on the agenda, but Moshe, since you're on the call, what's the latest on trying to get the 1.13 build working? Do we want to discuss that here?
Yeah, actually, as you know, I was requesting you and Parth on this thing that we get a request to fix some vulnerability. It was like 118 vulnerability in Rook 1.13 image that was built on Go 1.20, and we were thinking to upgrade it to 1.14, which could quite make it easy to solve most of the vulnerabilities, but from customer side they are asking that we first fix the vulnerability in 1.13 and then they will allow us to do the next upgrade to 1.14. That's why I was quite asking
Mhm.
Travis and Parth to have a support here, at least if we can um, build the Rook 1.13 image on this Go 1.22. In our case, our internal team is using their own build, and there they can build 1.20 Golang and 1.20 21 with Rook 1.13, but they are not able to do that with 1.22 Golang. And I opened that peer and have um, managed to do all the changes that Travis asked. And there it seems that only one file has these changes to have some Go supported versions. But as you said earlier, that the CI is got so much upset.
Right. Yeah, and I have not seen my email yet today to see if you responded today. So you said you updated the PR, so I'll take another look.
Yeah,
And because if it's just because there's is it the make file that you updated then that says allow building with Go 1.22? Was that the only change then? I guess I'll just look at the PR. But if that's the only change, then it's simple. We can just go ahead and do that change because it doesn't affect the CI. The CI is probably looks like not going to pass at this point because of some things have changed in the GitHub actions. But with that one scoped change, I'm not worried about the CI impact. So we should be able
yeah.
to make it.
I have changed this build make library golang.mk file. That one you suggested to change,
Yeah.
and otherwise all the files are the same. I
Okay.
haven't added this on this build.yml file. I reverted the changes as you commented.
Okay. So if we get that merged, then you're saying your team can build your own images. You don't need the Rook CI to have a release, correct?
It depends because Yeah, if it is in the release, that would be much easier. But just to explain to you that there is a barrier for me. I cannot see how their build process is working from our internal team. I work for this open source site, so there is some barrier.
Mhm.
But I need to confirm. Then after it's getting merged, they can take it from the upstream, and they can check if they can build it. If they build it, then
Okay.
I would ask you to have a release, please, if possible.
So yeah, well, if we have a we're the 1.13 just isn't in our officially supported release.
Yep.
So that's the challenge, and the CI may fail, but let's see if with this fix if that works, and if hopefully that does it. But I can't promise that we can get a release out for 1.13 since it is, I guess, older or beyond official support. But I mean, we want to support upstream users, so we'll see what we can do. It's just limited availability for older releases.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right, then any other topics anybody wants to bring up?
I don't want to keep dragging this out, but if we want to go, but I had a thought about if there was going to be a Rook 2.0, what would that look like? And the reason that I was thinking about this is last week as I was digging through the RGW code, there's a lot of overlap in people prefer to use CRD or kind to refer to the type thing. This seems to be every Kubernetes community uses a different thing. I tend to use them interchangeably.
Either way, but I'd say
Yeah,
CRD is our common
yeah.
one.
There's a lot of overlap between the CRDs. So for example, Ceph Object Store knows how to go and create a realm and a zone group and a zone, and it knows how to create pools. But there's also other CRDs that can do those things. And so to me, it'd be much tidier to say, well, let's just strip everything out of Ceph Object Store, and it only knows it requires that you reference these other CRs, or it just fails if those things aren't there for it, and to like start simplifying things down. um, that to me makes a lot of sense, but obviously that's a huge breaking change. So I don't know if any thought has been given as like what a 2.0 might look like, or nobody wants to go there.
But the topic has come up before, like, oh, let's redesign this thing and call it Rook 2.0. That my first reaction to Rook 2.0 is always that no, we don't want to go there at all ever, because it's so important to maintain compatibility. And I haven't seen a reason to yet. I mean, if Object Store really were to need a redesign and there's a good reason, then I think we would just have to keep supporting what we've got, and then we could do new CRDs probably for the new approach. Is kind of my first from the hip reaction to that. Because total Rook 2.0, I don't see that personally, but for specific features, new CRDs would be the way to do it, at least when needed.
All
I'm
right,
sure Blaine has some thoughts or others, but yeah.
Yes, I have thought about this quite a bit, and I have come to both of those conclusions that uh, particularly for RGW, also like partly for OSDs, which are like two of the most complicated things that we and Rook have to like work around. It, in cases beyond the most simple, I'm a user, I just want an object store that's like opinionated, because I don't have a lot of storage management experience. Like Ceph Object Store is really great for that. That's, Rook's initial intent, and I don't think that's bad. But definitely for getting to advanced use cases, it would be much easier to have kinds or CRs that match uh, the like building blocks, I guess I would call them, right? So it's like, oh, I'm gonna make uh, uh like a zone config, right? That just controls this like little JSON blob. I'm gonna use Ceph block pools to build up the pools, and then I'm gonna have like uh those be like composable little bits that I can put into a Helm chart that will end up creating whatever most complicated arbitrary Ceph object store that I need
Well, that's kind
to
of where I
have.
was going with it. I think that you can still make it simple for end users, saying like just use this field in the chart to set up a Ceph object store, and it just by default goes and creates a realm and a zone group and a zone, all those things that just have the same name, and so it's not necessarily something the user has to reason about.
Yeah, I mean, I I have come to that conclusion. I have also come to Travis's conclusion, right? So there's, I this is not a this won't happen, like especially when I think about the object store. I am I perpetually feel behind trying to catch up with what the object store is doing, with them trying to perpetually play catch up with AWS. Like it's a just a chain of people constantly chasing each other that uh it feels like Rook could allow in a better way. Um, but like we do need to be able to get there incrementally. So whatever we start working toward, I just want to make sure we can build toward it incrementally.
Fair enough.
I just added a few notes to the agenda on that topic for curious listeners. Yeah, good
I
question,
think
Topeka.
yeah, like I think at least there would be some improvement in more having more declarative approach to look like using more CIDs and less reliance on direct operations. Because I mean, if you want to manage more clusters with just using Kubernetes operations, that they rather than like having manual interventions, so in that case, like in the case of improving the pool placement or having more crush rule, like support for more advanced crush rules, that might, I mean, we can contribute that in future. But yeah, it's always, I think it's good to look at as a improvement like goal rather than revamping the whole thing. So yeah, so yeah, hopefully
Right.
like we can improve Rook.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it's that Rook is not declarative, it's that Rook
Yeah, no, no, it's
Rook
just
assumes that users want simplicity, and yeah, I think for a lot of the people on this call, like what we as users want is flexibility and very like minute grained level like control, which
yeah.
is often at odds with simplicity. And
Right.
working backwards has been challenging. So
I
like
think
trying,
yeah,
I mean, we're always doing that. We're always trying to like identify like, oh, well, now we want to control this because like this does end up being important
yeah.
for more advanced users, and I it, it
Hmm.
it is a challenge. Like it is something where in some ways Rook is always trying to play catch up with now advanced use cases.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, for me, actually, both use cases are important to me. I would not have been using Rook if it wasn't easy to get going with, right? So, like, the, the evolution of how I ended up here is that I had been dealing with GPFS for a very long time, and I didn't want to deal with GPFS anymore for reasons. Um, And so it was like, hey, let's try this. I've known about Ceph for a very, very long time, since the early days. I used to go to OSCON in, like, the aughts, and nag Sage about it and say, is it ready to use that? And every year he'd tell me, don't do it. um,
Nice.
so it's been on my radar for a long time. But eventually it was like, hey, let's give this a try. I have this very specific use case. I need to provide Kubernetes on site as a way to migrate away from all of these custom deployment things. And I need PVCs. And so that was like, I just installed it and it just worked, like, with not a lot of messing around. So that is, I see the incredible value in that, and to get more people to adopt it, that's a killer use case. But I also think that, you can still make it easy by hiding some of that complexity in a Helm chart, or you could even do a shell game of having some really simple to use CRDs that then just turn around and create more. They create this a one-to-many relationship where they generate the more complex, finer grained CRDs behind the scenes, and do that to make the implementation complexity lower. Um, I'm not saying when I'm saying that what would be in a 2.0, I'm not identifying a specific problem. I was just saying, looking at this, I think the maintenance burden could be lower on a lot of these components because there's a lot of duplicated overlap between the existing CRDs for object
Right.
store.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely see that with Object Store, and I would love to have, I mean, definitely more offline discussions about like how can we like incrementally move forward with having um having more of a, I don't want to think about this hierarchically, but like having like uh the like current simplicity focused resources, and then having like deep dive focused resources where we kind of like have a tier of uh, complexity in a way. I especially for object store, I and I mean also in other ways as well, like talking about crush rules and pools, like even those could benefit. But I especially for RGW, that's like where I'm like, man, this is a big problem where we're always just behind.
I can tell you that the Clyso people are horrified at the multiple crush rules. every a crush rule generated for pool, they were like, "What? It does what?"
Yeah. Well, great. Well, lots of great discussion, great questions. Love to follow up on a lot of these topics. So the feedback is very helpful. So thanks everyone. But I guess we'll wrap it up for today. Any final comments, anybody? If not, thanks and have a good day. All right.
Good one.
Talk to you
Thanks.
later.
See you.
Bye.